Amplified podcast. My name is Jac Carnett. I'm glad to have you with us. Today we are going to be examining 3 of the last chapters of Genesis. So this won't be our final episode for Genesis, but we're going to examine. And so just to catch you up, if you haven't watched the last few episodes with us, we've been reading the stories of Genesis. We've seen amazing things. We've seen Noah's flood. We've seen the creation of the world. We've seen brothers turn against each other. We've seen deception. We've seen lies. We've seen adultery. We've seen all kinds of crazy stuff that happens in Genesis. And sometimes the world paints the Bible as like this, this person just running in a field, holding and throwing flowers, and it's just all love and kindness. And honestly, you'd have to search for the love and kindness in between all of the murder and deception and adultery and many husbands and wives. And so it is about God's faithfulness throughout the sins of history. And so these stories have been no different that we've been reading as of late. And so we've been reading the story of Joseph and his 11 brothers that are now joining him in Egypt. We finally got to see the veil come down off of Joseph, and he finally reveals to his brothers that, I am alive. I'm standing here in front of you. I'm the one who's been talking to you this whole time. Of course, they're beside themselves, and they're immediately sent back home to go get Jacob. And what does that mean? Well, if they're going back home to to Israel, back to their father's house, back to Jacob's house, they're going to have to tell them, listen, you got to come to Egypt because Joseph is alive. And the first question he's going to ask is, why is Joseph alive? I thought you told me years ago that Joseph was dead. That's a tough conversation to have. And so that's where they are right now, is they had to go home and tell their father that their brother Joseph is still alive. And I'm sure at the same time, tell him, we were the ones that supposedly killed him, when in reality we just sold him into slavery, and we've been keeping the secret from you for 20 years. And so this is a whole family drama that we've been analyzing. And so if this is your first episode, we're glad to have you with us. Hopefully that catches you up. And this podcast is all about helping people understand the Bible better and really helping Generation Z understand the Bible better. Maybe you've been going to church your whole life and you can't really grasp what the Bible is all about. This podcast is for you. And so we're glad to have you with us. Of course, if you have any questions, you can comment them below on Instagram or on Facebook, on my Facebook, or on YouTube or Spotify. We'd love to talk to you about it. And let's dive into it. And of course, like and subscribe this, because we want more people to find out about the Bible. And so today we're going to start with chapter 46, and hopefully all of that catches you up to where we are today. And at this moment, Israel says, I have to go to Egypt now. I have to see my son if he's still alive. And so it says this in chapter 46. So Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba, where both his father and his grandfather had worshipped and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night, and he said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. Of course, when God calls our name, one of the best things that we can say is, here I am. All of these boys say this, and it seems like it's a pretty good response for them and for God. He said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will surely bring you and your people up again, and Joseph will put his hand on your eyes to close them at the time of your death. And so he's kind of reassuring him. It's likely Jacob feels fear about going to Egypt. They're not necessarily their friends, but he also doesn't want to be caught in Egypt forever. And so God is reiterating the plan that I will give you the land of Canaan. You will see your son again. So Jacob set out from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob and their children and their wives in the wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry him. They took their livestock and the possessions which they had acquired in the land of Canaan and came to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants with him. his sons and his grandsons, his daughters and all his granddaughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. So the whole family is now moving to Egypt. Okay, so oftentimes when we see a list of names in the Bible, we just look at them at face value. We don't think about what they mean. But earlier in Genesis, when we start to see the generations go down, we see how the names take on darker and darker and more wicked meanings. But if you look up every name in this chapter, all of the close descendants of Jacob, all of them pretty much have beautiful meanings to their names. Most of them are glorifying God. Some of them are kind of just like normal names, meaning breakthrough or strong, but a lot of them mean praise or joined or shining or unity or my vineyard or enclosure or dedicated, watchpost, oak tree, hope of God, my watcher, hero of God. They have wonderful meanings. And so clearly the devotion of Jacob has permeated through this family. And it says this: now these are the names of the sons of Israel, Jacob and his sons who went to Egypt. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. So we're going to read several names here. By several, I mean a lot. So I'm just going to write down the names of the immediate sons of Jacob. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. The sons of Reuben were Hanak, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. Sorry, not Camry. That'd be kind of cool. The sons of Simeon, that's the second one. This was the one who was in jail in Egypt for about a year. Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, not Joaquin, that would also be cool. Jachin, Zohar, Shaul, and the son of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi were Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Yep. The sons of Judah were Onan, Shelah, Perez, Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan, and the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. If you go back a few episodes to the story of Judah, you see that all three of those boys, I believe, were married to the same woman because they kept dying over and over. So that's a very interesting story. The sons of Issachar, Issachar, were Tola, Puvah, Job, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, so this is brother number 6, were Sarad, Elon, and Jaleel. The sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Padan Aram with his daughter Dinah. All of his sons and daughters numbered 33. Yes, his grandsons and all of his sons and daughters. So the sons of Gad were Ziphion, Haggai, Shuni, Esbon, Eri, Arodi, and Areli. The sons of Asher were Imnah, Ishvi, Barai, Sarah, their sister. And the sons of Barai were Heber and Malkiel. The sons of Zilpah, the maid whom Laban gave to Leah, his daughter, when she married Jacob, and she bore to Jacob these 16 persons, 2 sons and 14 grandchildren. So these first 6 were all sons of Leah. Then we have these 2 that are the sons of Zilpah. So this is going by the mothers. Jacob is the father of all of these. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, were Joseph and Benjamin. So we can write them down. Joseph and Benjamin. Now we're up to 10 sons. This is Rachel. Rachel Green. Now Joseph in the land of Egypt, to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim. So I'm just going to write them here below. These boys are important because they are actually given their own tribes of Israel, even though they are not the direct sons of Jacob. They are given their own tribes because Levi is not technically a tribe because, Levi is not technically a tribe because they are the priesthood. And so now that you're missing one, the next tribe would be Benjamin, and Benjamin is split into two, Manasseh and Ephraim. I'm going to switch my color back here real quick. Okay. Now to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On in Egypt, bore to him. The sons of Benjamin were Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Mupim, Hupim, and Ard. These are names that we would never hear in our daily lives. And these are the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob. There were 14 persons in all, 2 sons and 12 grandchildren. The son Dan, to the son Dan was born Hushim. So it's possible maybe he just had one son, or the Bible just mentions one son. The son of Naphtali, our final brother, Naphtali. Jaziel, Guni, Jezer, and Shillim. These are the sons of Bilhah. So this is the other maid of these girls, Bilhah. The maid whom Laban gave to Rachel, his daughter, when she married Jacob. And she bore these to Jacob. There were 7 persons in all, 2 sons and 5 grandchildren. All the persons who came with Jacob into Egypt, who were his direct descendants, not counting the wives of Jacob and Jacob's sons, were 66 persons in all. So this is a big family reunion that's all coming together. The sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Egypt, were 2. All the persons of the house of Jacob, including Jacob and Joseph and his sons, came into Egypt were 70. Now Jacob sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to direct him to Goshen, and they came into the land of Goshen. Then Joseph prepared his chariots and went up to meet Israel his father in Goshen. As soon as he presented himself before him, authenticating his identity, he fell on his father's neck and wept on his neck for a very long time. So this is the continuation of that soap opera that we see with these boys where, man, these are real people really living real lives. He was really separated from his father for 23 years. And now, of course, at reuniting with his father, he hugs him and weeps on his neck for a long time. And Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die in peace, since I've seen your face and know that you are still alive." So he's basically saying, I can die now. Everything that I hoped could have happened, my hope of 20 years that had basically been extinguished is back. Joseph is alive. Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up to Pharaoh and tell Pharaoh and say to him, 'My brothers and my father's household who are in the land of Canaan have come to me. And the men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. And it shall be that when Pharaoh calls you and says, "What is your occupation?" you shall say, "Your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth until now, both we and our fathers before us, in order that you may live separately and securely in the land of Egypt. For every shepherd is repulsive to the Egyptians." So this is kind of the beginning of that descent that maybe we see from them living very wealthy lives in Egypt, all the way down into slavery that we see at the beginning of Exodus, because they ate separately, so there's segregation there. But also they're going to tell Pharaoh, we've been shepherds our whole lives, which is true. But this is going to further separate them from the Egyptians and further separate them as their own people, which is that's very important, because they don't want to get caught up in all the idolatry and really the culture of Egypt. But of course, that's what happens anyway over 400 years. So we'll dive into chapter 47. Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh, "My father and my brothers with their flocks have come, with all their herds and all that they own, have come from the land of Canaan, and they are in the land of Goshen." Now remember, we talked about it in the last podcast, that the land of Goshen here in Israel, this is really like Martha's Vineyard, the Upper East Side. This is the nice part of LA, which I think is the Palisades. This is this is the cream of the crop area. This is where you want to live. And so because Joseph has now brought all the wealth of the world into Egypt and it's running through his hands, Pharaoh's like, of course, you can have the nicest place of anywhere that you want. I mean, we own the world because of you, Joseph. And so, of course, they're given the nicest land there. And it says this: he took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to his brothers, as Joseph expected, "What is your occupation?" And they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, both we and our fathers before us." Moreover, they said to Pharaoh, "We have come to live temporarily in the land of Egypt, for there's no pasture for the flocks of your servants in our land, for the famine is very severe in Canaan. So now please let your servants live in the land of Canaan." Remember, Joseph interpreted the dream of Pharaoh that there would be 7 good years and 7 bad years. And so now the 7 years have come and gone for the good years, and now the 7 bad years are here. And we are about 1, 2, 3 years into these 7 years. And so by now, all the crops, all of the grass, all the fields have already died out. And the only way these boys are going to keep their flocks alive is if they move temporarily to Egypt. Then Pharaoh spoke to the brothers, saying, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best land. Let them live in the land of Goshen. If you know of any men of ability, put them in charge of my livestock." And so it's amazing that Pharaoh trusts Joseph so much that even though he's just meeting these boys, he's saying, "Look, Joseph, go settle in the best land possible. And then if you think so, go ahead and grab a couple of them and you put them in charge of my flocks here in Egypt." So already they're being leveled up to, an elevated status in Egypt because of the faithfulness of Joseph. Okay, now this is where it gets interesting. This is where Joseph's father, Jacob, comes and stands before Pharaoh. At this moment, who is the most powerful man on the face of the earth. Then Joseph brought Jacob, Israel, his father, and presented him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh asked Jacob, "How old are you?" How old are you? And I want to read a couple things that are in the bottom of my Amplified Bible here. And it says, when it's talking about, Pharaoh meeting these boys, this is what the Bible has to say. "There's some uncertainty concerning the identity of this Pharaoh. Many believe that this was Amenhotep I of the 11th dynasty. Prior to his reign in Egypt, Egypt had suffered political and economic chaos for 200 years. Irrigation and building projects fell to ruin. Civil war raged. This Pharaoh's having to deal with a lot of stuff. But Pharaoh Amenhotep was able to reunite Egypt, rebuilding the country and developing the trade. One of the reasons for his success, no doubt, stemmed from the fact that he was a generous man, as we are told here." So we often see in the Bible that the Pharaohs are extremely shrewd and angry and hard men, as we'll see throughout most of the book of Exodus. But, not all people are alike. And so this Pharaoh seemed to be very open to the idea of these boys living in Egypt, but also being in charge of a lot of what, Pharaoh controlled. And the Bible the Amplified goes on to say, not only was he generous to his own people, but he was also kind to Israel. God had already promised to bless those who bless the descendants of Abraham. The lesson is clear. If a pagan king can experience God's blessing for his liberality, just his willingness to give freely to these boys, how much more can born-again believers know the riches of heaven for their liberality? So for our willingness to just give and give and give, knowing that God is going to bless us for it. Solomon reminds us of this principle: the generous man shall be prosperous and rich. And so Pharaoh here is not like the Pharaoh that we see in Exodus. He's much different. He's much more kind. He's much more understanding. He obviously cares deeply for Joseph. I mean, I would too if all of the wealth of the world had been given to me because of this one guy. But it's amazing that this Pharaoh is so kind to Joseph. And so the Bible goes on to say, Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. So at this point, Jacob has outlived his grandfather by 10 years. And now standing before Pharaoh in Egypt, he is 130 years old. And oftentimes in the Bible, when we see someone's age out of the blue, it's because this is either one of the most important or the most important moment of their life. And standing before the most powerful man in the world as, just an Israelite of another country, this is a pretty important moment for Jacob. The years of my pilgrimage are 130. Few and unpleasant have been the years of my life, and they have not reached the years that my fathers lived during the days of their pilgrimage. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and departed from his presence. And so it's interesting that, Jacob is given one moment with Pharaoh, and the only thing that we're told is that he tells him how old he is and that he's had a hard life. Jacob says, I've had a bitter life. These few years have been difficult all the way through. They've been unpleasant. And, we may be thinking, how could he say that? He has his son back now. His son is the most powerful man of Egypt other than the man he's standing before. But let's look at the life of Jacob for just a second. He had to fight with his twin brother their entire childhood and into their adult lives. He had to steal away the blessing of his father on the advice of his mother. And then he had to leave his father's house, never to see his mother again, also because of his mother's advice. And then once he was there, he wanted to marry this woman, but he was tricked into marrying the sister whom he didn't like as much. And then he had to live there for 7 more years and serve 7 more years just to earn the ability to marry the second wife. He has all of these children, and all the while he's being treated horribly by his father-in-law, who is also his uncle. And then he finally gets to come back home, and he has this wonderful son that he loves so much, but that son is sold into slavery, and he's told that he's been dead for 20 years. And now he's finally landed at the feet of Pharaoh in a foreign nation. And he says, my life has been bitter. My life has been hard. And so it's kind of a window into, the mindset of Jacob at this point. And it says this: so Joseph settled his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in Egypt, the best of the land of Ramses of Goshen, as Pharaoh commanded. Joseph provided and supplied his brother and his father and all of his father's household with food according to the needs of their children. Now it says this: now in the course of time there was no food in all the land, for the famine was distressingly severe, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. So it's definitely been at least 3 years of famine. So nothing has grown in Egypt or any of the surrounding land, or probably the known world, the whole Mediterranean area crescent. For these years, things are getting bad. And we're going to see how bad they get here in just a second. So it says this: Joseph gathered all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan in payment for the grain that they bought. And Joseph Hold on, let me just read that again. Joseph gathered all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan in payment for the grain which they bought, and Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. And when the money was exhausted in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? For our money is gone." So what it's saying is, people spent their entire life savings, all of their family's fortune, all the money that they had in their savings accounts, their fun money accounts, their vacation Carnival cruise line accounts. Everything has been spent. Now, they are absolutely broke. All the people in the area are broke. So in this, I believe this is the 3rd year. So let's say the 3rd year, the money runs out. So they're paying for things with money in the 3rd year, okay? Joseph said, "Give up your livestock and I will give you food in exchange for the livestock, since your money is gone." So this isn't a bad deal. Joseph is saying, okay, what do you have that's worth anything? We have livestock. And so Joseph says, okay, sell us your livestock. We'll barter you for it. And we'll give you will give you food in return, because he can't just give this food away. Egypt has to, still support itself. Joseph said, give us your livestock and I will give you food in exchange for your livestock, since the money is gone. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange for the horses and the flocks and the herds and the donkeys. He supplied them with food in exchange for all the livestock of that year. When the year was ended, they came to him and said, we will not hide from our Lord the fact that our money is spent, my Lord. Also our herds of livestock, there's nothing left in the sight of our Lord but our bodies and our lands. So, in the 4th year now, they've run out of livestock. I think this is correct. Actually, I'm going to change it up. So I believe in the 4th year, by the 4th year, they've run out of money. So 4th year, and now the 5th year, they've run out of livestock, because I know what's coming next. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land, by us and our land in exchange for food, and we and our land will be servants to Pharaoh, and give us seed to plant, that we may live and not die, and that the land may not be desolate. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. For every Egyptian sold his field, because the famine was so severe upon them that the land became Pharaoh's. As for the people, he relocated them temporarily to cities from one end of Egypt's border to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had an allotment from Pharaoh, and they lived on the mount which Pharaoh gave them, and so they did not sell their land. Then Joseph said to the people, look, today I have bought you and your land for Pharaoh. Now here is seed for you, and you shall plant the land. At harvest time, when you reap the increase, you shall give 1/5 of it to Pharaoh, and 4/5 will be yours to use for seed for the field, and as food for you and those of your household and for your little ones. So, again, I could be getting the years off just a little bit, but for the 6th and 7th years, they're saying, listen, we don't have any more money. We don't have any more livestock. If you don't give us the grain, all of Egypt, all of Canaan, this whole area is going to die. And so Joseph says, okay, give us your land and give us yourselves. So basically they're selling themselves into kind of indentured servitude. Like, we don't work for each other anymore. Now we work for the state of Egypt. And so, it kind of reeks of big government just a little bit, but suffice it to say, all of the money and wealth of Egypt has been funneled now into Joseph. He has all the money. He owns all the livestock. He owns all the land. And now it seems like in the 7th year, he's giving them the grain and saying, now the famine is coming to an end. So go plant this seed so that we don't have to do this again next year. And he tells them, when it does harvest in the 8th year, I want you to take 1/5 of it and give it back to Egypt, back to the Pharaoh as payment. This is kind of like your taxes. And then the other 4/5, you can do whatever you want. We'll just write whatevs. Whatever you want to do with it. You can feed your family. You can, buy livestock back. You can do whatever you want, but just give us 20% back. And they said, you have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants. And Joseph made it law over the land of Egypt, valid to this day, that Pharaoh should have the 5th part of the crops. Only the land of the priests did not become the Pharaoh's. And so it doesn't seem like the people were all that upset about this. It seemed like they were actually pretty happy about this deal that, for basically nothing, nothing physical, they're giving themselves in servanthood of Egypt. They're able to then get all the grain that they need to plant and feed their families. Now the people of Israel lived in the country of Egypt in the land of Goshen, and they gained possessions and acquired property and were fruitful and multiplied greatly. So I was talking to my father about this, and we were discussing this chapter specifically. And we have this idea that, rightfully so, from the beginning of Genesis, that the entire time the Israelites are in Egypt for these 400 roughly 400 years that they were slaves. But this is not really true. They were slaves by the time we find them again in Exodus 400 years later. But you have to think about the beginning. This is a slide and a descent into slavery. They actually started off fruitful. They started off rich because they were related to Joseph. They started off wealthy in the best land. But over 400 years, whether it was by their own design or by the forgetfulness of the pharaohs, they ended up as servants and eventually abused slaves in the end. Now, no doubt they were oppressed during that time because that is exactly what the Bible says, that they were oppressed for this time. But I think that oppression was a long slope down into slavery because obviously they're doing very well. And it says, and Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147. So they weren't struggling over in Goshen, up there in the Upper East Side. They're living a pretty good life over there. But as we'll see at the beginning of Exodus, the Bible says, now came along a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph or what he had done. 400 years is a long time. And even though Joseph was great, he was beginning to be forgotten by history. And so, therefore, the indebtedness that, or the debt that, Pharaoh owed to the Hebrews and to Joseph specifically was being forgotten. So it says this, and when the time drew near for Israel to die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, if now I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and promise to deal loyally and faithfully with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt. So just at face value, this may look like a weird thing to ask, put your hand on my thigh. But this would be kind of like if you, today, if we like shook hands like this, or you like grasp each other's forearms. This is like a more secure, more memorable. This is like, I don't know. It's like, it's a covenant. This is make me a promise. Okay. Do not bury me in Egypt. But when I lie down with my fathers in death, you will carry me out of Egypt and bury me in the burial place at Hebron at the cave of Machpelah. And Joseph said, I will do as you've directed. Then he said, swear to me that you will do it. So he swore to him. Then Israel bowed in worship at the head of the bed. Clearly, where these boys end up is very, very important to them and where they're buried. They don't want to be buried in this foreign land, this pagan land of Egypt, which leads us into our final and third chapter for today. Chapter 48. Now, sometime after these things happened, Joseph was told, your father is sick. So he took his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, to go with him to Goshen. And when Jacob Israel was told, look, now your son Joseph has come to you, Israel strengthened himself and sat up in the bed. Then Jacob said to Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz at Bethel in the land of Canaan and blessed me. And he said to me, behold, I will make you fruitful and numerous. I will make you a great company of people, and I will give you this land to your descendants as an everlasting possession. So, of course, this is talking about the land of Israel that the Israelites, the Hebrews, the Jews were given. This goes way, way, way back. Now your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in the land of Egypt, are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine. That is, adopted as my heirs and sons, surely. As Reuben and Simeon are my sons. So he's saying, like, I know that they didn't come from me, but they are my sons now. They get to share in that inheritance. But the other sons who are born to you after them, they shall be your own. So he's like, look, I'm not giving this to everybody, okay? But I'll give it to your first two kids. They shall be called by the names of their two brothers and their inheritance. Now as for me, when I came to Padan in Mesopotamia, Rachel died beside me in the land of Canaan on the journey, when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath, and I buried her there, on the way to Ephrath that is in Bethlehem. When Israel, who was almost blind, saw Joseph's sons, he said, who are these? Joseph said to his father, they are my sons whom God has given me in Egypt. He said, please bring them to me so that I may bless them. Now Israel's eyes were very dim from his age so that he could not see clearly. Then Joseph brought them close to him. He kissed he kissed and embraced him. Israel said to Joseph, I never expected to see your face, but see, God has shown me your children as well. This is one of the coolest things that is said in his life, because God took not only this fear that he would never see his son again, but he not only gave back to him his son, but he gave him grandchildren. And so God is able to give to us far and above what we can ask, think, or imagine. There's no way that Jacob was ever thinking, I wish that I could see my grandchildren. He's thinking, I wish I could have my son. But now God has given back to him not only his son, but grandchildren as well. He's giving above and beyond. Then Joseph took the two boys from his father's embrace, and he bowed before him with his face to the ground. Then Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand. So we'll say on the right, we have Ephraim. This will be important in a second. Then Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left, and Manasseh with his left hand toward Israel's right, and brought them close to him. So let's get this straight. So we have Israel sitting up in bed, and we have Joseph here bringing the brothers together. We have Ephraim on the right, and we have Manasseh on the left. This is going to be important in just a second. They are approaching Joseph, and of course they're approaching Jacob or Israel, and Israel's facing them, so it's backwards for him. And it says this, but Israel reached out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim. So his hand's going, this hand's going over here, who is the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his hands intentionally, though Manasseh was the firstborn. So he's crossing his hands intentionally and placing his hands like this on their heads. Then Jacob or Israel blessed Joseph and said, the God whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked in faithful obedience to, the God who has been my shepherd, leading and carrying me for me all my life to this day, the angel that is the Lord himself, who has redeemed me continually from all evil, bless these boys. And may my name live on in them. May they be worthy of having their names linked with mine, and the names of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and may they grow into great multitude in the midst of the earth. So this is kind of like the moments where Israel is grafting these boys, though they were born apart from Israel, into the blessing that God had promised Jacob. When Joseph saw that his fathers laid his right hand on Ephraim's head, it displeased him because he was not the firstborn. He grasped his father's hand and moved it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to his father, not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Place your right hand on Manasseh's head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. Manasseh will also become a people, and he will be great, but his younger brothers shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of the nations. And so we're finding out that it's maybe true that Jacob is still partial to certain grandsons, certain of his children. And just like Jacob was initially the secondborn, who became the greater of the two, we're seeing maybe the same kind of blessing being poured out on these boys. Then Jacob blessed them that day, saying, by you, Israel, will pronounce a blessing, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. And he put Ephraim and Manasseh before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, behold, I am about to die, but God will be with you and bring you back to Canaan in the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given you the birthright, one portion more than any of your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my bow. So he's starting to, bequeath and give away. He's starting to kind of read his will and read out what he's going to be giving these sons. So next week in our final episode for this season, the book of Genesis, chapters 49 and 50, we're going to see these prophecies and these blessings and how Jacob really feels about all of his sons. We see that he still has favoritism for Joseph. He's grafting these grandsons into sonship. And he's also telling Joseph, I've given you one more portion extra than the rest of your brothers. But this is the moments where it's kind of all coming together for Jacob. And this is kind of his last will and testament that's going to be read. And so for next week, for our last episode, it'll be our last episode on Genesis. We'll want you to stick around. It's going to be a good time. We're going to wrap up this story, and then we'll dive into Exodus, and we'll meet Moses for the very first time. So, of course, if you have any questions, please leave in the comments. We're glad to have you with us. This has been the Amplified Bible.